Hey, Professor Joseph Drew. I'm here to talk to you about three classic mistakes that people make when they're writing a scholarly journal paper, writing a book, or writing an assignment. And we're all guilty of these mistakes. I just made a mistake myself last year. It's quite frustrating when I tell other people not to do it. So the most seasoned scholars are doing this on occasion. You see it a lot with students. You see it particularly at master's coursework level and early PhD students when they're trying to do too much too quickly. And indeed, that's the very first of my three classic mistakes, trying to do too much. Now, as I said, mea culpa. I wrote a paper recently on population decline and I tried to do too much. I had two theories in there and some sophisticated empirical work, and it's just too much. Yeah, the theories made sense, they were both necessary, but the point of the matter is that a reviewer is not going to be able to juggle that much, particularly with the state of reviewing and the state of some of our journals these days. You do more than one theory and some empirical work, it's just not going to get accepted. It doesn't matter how good it is. The days of really sophisticated, robust work, sadly, they're behind us in the scholarly community. And indeed, often if you've got sophisticated empirical work, if you put good theory, robust theory with it, people will find it too much. By the same token, if you have really robust, sophisticated theory, if you put some empirical work with it, people will find it too much. So absolute maximum, one robust theory, one good piece of sophisticated empirical work, but even that's pushing your luck these days. And the other classic mistake is not understanding the issue properly before you start writing. Now, I've told you before in videos, until you can explain to someone precisely what your paper's all about and what the main points are, and list those main premises to get to a logical conclusion, you're not ready to write. I've also suggested before that you explain it to someone else. Leibniz, my son's new dog, he is a really good listener. He hears about all my paper and books ideas well before I get to the writing phase. It's even better if you can get an interested person, but let's face it, when you're doing the sort of stuff I do for a living, it's going to be really hard to find someone that's interested. Tommaso de Aquinas, some of you know him, St. Thomas, made a great quote. He says that the good work and thought takes a lot of effort, which is why so few are willing to get there. That was in Summa Contra Gentiles, and he's exactly right. Most people aren't willing to put the thought and the effort into the idea. Most people aren't willing to put the homework into the idea. But if you want to have success, you're going to have to do that. Now, I fell foul of this recently, I think it was last year also. I was in a huge rush. My workload, 10, 11 hour days, significant consulting, some teaching, books and lots of papers and setting up centres for local government and all sorts of things. I just don't have time. Usually to write a paper I have 1 or 2 weeks tops. I really need 2 weeks, 1 week to plan, 1 week to write. In this particular case, I only had 1 week and I rushed it and I regretted it. Don't rush it. Take the time, make sure you really understand what you're doing and you know exactly what you're doing before you put pen to paper. Now, before I get to the third point, which is very important, just a reminder that if you get value out of these videos, please subscribe, please send it on to someone else. In my homepage on YouTube, I get bombarded with all these suggested videos by usually pretty young ladies telling me how to write a thesis, the magic recipe for doing kick-ass papers and all the rest of it. They've clearly got no experience, they've clearly got no qualifications, they've clearly got no record of achievement. They're just there to put on a show. Now, I know I'm not a polished performer, but I do know what I'm talking about. And if you think it's worthwhile having someone that does know what they're talking about, well then subscribe, send it to someone else, encourage them to subscribe. That's all I ask for in return. Thank you very much. And the number 3 mistake classic mistake that people make is being too innovative. Sort of related to doing too much, but doing too much is having two theories instead of one, for instance, two lots of empirical work instead of one. This is doing too much innovation, doing something that people haven't done before. Now, it probably comes as a surprise to you because that's what scholars are supposed to do. We're supposed to generate new knowledge. And 15 years ago, if you were doing that, you would get accepted in the best journals. Now, you'll get desk rejected. People aren't willing to take risks, journals aren't, journal editors aren't, reviewers aren't. Often they don't actually know the work, nor are they willing to put the effort into the work. An example recently was Kirin, the beer company in Japan. I'm a shareholder of them there, so I take it very seriously watching what they're doing. They don't just produce beer, they produce all sorts of different drinks and soft drinks, and one of the things they produced recently was a spoon that made the salty taste in your ramen seem more salty, so you'd use less salt and get better health outcomes. Far too innovative. No one's going to accept that just now. Now, there might become a time in the future when that's considered one of the greatest inventions of humankind, but in all likelihood, because it's too out there, it's too new, it's too novel, it's not going anywhere. It was just a waste of money. Now, my own example, very recently I wrote a paper looking at syllogisms, syllogistic logic. There's videos on my channel about this. Basic Aristotelian logic. So you have a premise, then you have another premise. Premises are just statements about subjects. And then you can draw a valid conclusion from the two premises. Nothing earth-shattering, but most scholars haven't been exposed to that. It was in the Organon. It was considered part of the curriculum for 1500 years, but these days we've ditched all formal logic and formal logic real knowledge. So it's just too innovative. And I got this rejected all over the world until I found a journal that was capable of reading something, pretty straightforward, really, and described very simply in my paper. And then I finally had success. But the point of the story here is if you're going to do something really innovative that people haven't done before, like applying syllogistic reasoning to public policy formulation, you're going to have to expect problems. Now, I do it voluntarily, knowing that I was going to have problems because I believe that scholars should be pushing the boundaries. We should be generating new knowledge. But if you're a young scholar or you're just doing your PhD, don't go there. It's just too many desk rejects. The easiest way for young scholars and people doing their PhD is to stick to stuff that's been done ad nauseum before and do it in a slightly different context. You'll get your publication or get your PhD. Really not advancing the state of our knowledge, really not fulfilling the purpose of scholars in universities. But the way things are now with risk-averse desk editors, risk-averse journals, maybe that's what you have to be satisfied with, unless you're like me and you're driven for the thirst to come to new understandings about the truth, in which case you just got to accept the consequences, which is that you're going to have a devil of a time getting it published. Look, I hope all this has been very helpful for you. If it has, be one of those nice people that send me a nice email occasionally, which keeps me going, and let me know. If it's not, let me know about that too. Thank you very much for your time. Goodbye.